and a very warm welcome. I'm Alison Lagrange, live from Durban, South Africa, and you are watching Firstpost. In the next few minutes, we'll get the top 40 updates from around the world, only here on Fast and Factual. Let's get started. China backs India against Trump's 50% tariffs, calls US a bully. China has backed India amid the US President Trump's 50% tariff threat. Chinese envoy to India called the US a bully and said that Beijing would firmly stand with New Delhi. He also emphasized the need for stronger mutual trust between China and India and the need to avoid mutual suspicion. The Chinese envoy also emphasized that both India and China should resolve their differences through dialogue. The Philippine military said that Chinese Coast Guard and militia ships have been deployed near the Second Thomas Shoal in the South China Sea. At least 14 Chinese vessels, some armed with high-calibre weapons and supported by a helicopter and drone, were spotted close to the grounded BRP Sierra Madre. The Filipino forces stationed on the ship were put on alert, with 2 boatloads of troops sent to block further Chinese advances. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz warned that Gaza City would be destroyed if Hamas did not disarm, release the remaining hostages, and agree to end the war on Israel's terms. Katz said on social media that the gates of hell would open on Hamas unless it met Israel's conditions. His comments came a day after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced immediate negotiations to secure the release of hostages still held in Gaza. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will hold a joint call with his French, British and German counterparts to discuss stalled nuclear negotiations and sanctions. The 3 European powers have threatened to trigger the UN snapback mechanism to restore sanctions if Iran does not return to talks. Western countries allege Iran's nuclear program could lead to weapons development, though the IAEA and the US intelligence have said that Iran is not currently pursuing a nuclear bomb. Iran launched its first solo military drills since the June war with Israel, aiming to project strength after suffering major losses. State media said Navy forces fired missiles and drones at sea targets during the Sustainable Power 1404 exercise. And Sri Lanka's former president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, has been arrested for allegedly misusing government funds for personal use. The former president was taken into police custody after he was questioned about a September 2023 visit to London. He allegedly attended a ceremony with his wife at a British university on his way back from the G77 summit in Havana using government's money. And former Thai Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra was acquitted of the royal defamation charges, avoiding up to 15 years in prison. A Bangkok court ruled that the evidence against the 76-year-old was insufficient. The case was linked to remarks allegedly made in South Korean media about Thailand's 2014 military coup. Though cleared, his family's political dynasty remains under pressure, with his daughter, Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra, currently suspended and facing a court ruling next week that could force her out of office. And the Trump administration suspended the issuance of work visas to foreign truck drivers. This is after a fatal crash in Florida that drew national attention. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced the move on X, citing rising concerns that foreign drivers pose risks to road safety and threaten American trucking jobs. The decision follows charges against a truck driver accused of killing 3 people while making an illegal U-turn. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket successfully launched from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida, carrying the U.S. military's classified X-37B space drone. The launch lit up the night sky, according to a SpaceX live stream. The U.S. Space Force said the mission will test advanced technologies, including laser communications and a next-generation quantum interior sensor. Now this as a part of its experimentation objectives. And India's Supreme Court revised its earlier order on stray dogs in Delhi and NCR, ruling that sterilized, dewormed and vaccinated dogs should be released back into the areas they were taken from. A three-judge bench clarified, however, that dogs infected with rabies, suspected of carrying the disease or displaying aggressive behavior should not be released but kept in separate shelters. The court also directed municipal authorities to establish dedicated feeding zones for stray dogs in each ward. And on to climate news now. Typhoon Lingling has inundated streets in Japan's Kyushu region. It made landfall in the Kagoshima prefecture on Thursday evening and moved into the Pacific Ocean early on Friday. However, heavy rains continued to develop and increase the risk of flooding and landslides. At least 300 millimeters of rain was recorded in southern Kyushu in the 24 hours through to Friday morning. Meanwhile, officials issued landslide warnings as some areas had already suffered damage from record rainfall earlier this month. A wildfire swept through Northern California on Thursday. The Coyote Fire, which started on Wednesday, burned across El Dorado County. Over 1,000 firefighters from multiple agencies fought the flames by land and air. The fire scorched at least 624 acres, but was only 5% contained by late Thursday. However, evacuation warnings were issued for communities near the Oma Ranch Road. Meanwhile, scientists said that hot and dry conditions made containment much harder. And people in Los Angeles struggled to stay cool amid a heat wave. The National Weather Service issued an extreme heat warning on Thursday and said it would last through at least to Saturday. The temperatures reached the mid-90s Fahrenheit, with some areas surpassing over 100 degrees. However, city officials advised residents to stay hydrated and to use cooling centers at parks, libraries, and recreation areas. Meanwhile, fire departments pre-deployed strike teams, water tankers, and helicopters to high-risk areas to prevent any fires from spreading. In Norway, Greta Thunberg and at least 100 climate activists blocked Oslo's Main Street and a bank branch on Thursday. They demanded that Norway shut down its oil and gas industry, saying it drives the climate crisis. This action followed a 36-hour blockade of Norway's largest oil refinery earlier this week. Activists also claimed that the DNB bank funds fossil fuel expansion in Scandinavia. Norway, Western Europe's biggest oil and gas producer, defended its output as crucial for jobs and Europe's energy needs. And on to business and tech news. Asian stocks edged higher in a shaky start earlier today, with investors cautiously awaiting U.S. Federal Chair Jerome Powell's speech at the Jackson Hole Symposium. Financial markets are looking out for Powell to provide clues about the likelihood of a September rate cut. The MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside of Japan gained 0.2%, while China's blue-chip CSI 300 index was on track for a third consecutive day of gains. The Nikkei 225 veered between gains and losses. And New Zealand's Fonterra announced that it would sell its global consumer and associated businesses to the French dairy giant Lactalis for $2.24 billion. Now, the deal included brands such as Mainland and Anchor Butter, as well as the Kapiti ice cream and cheese, along with food service and ingredients units across Oceania, the Middle East, and Africa. Fonterra said the deal would be completed subject to shareholder and regulatory approval and anticipated it to close in the first half of next year. A new report suggested that Boeing is in talks to sell as many as 500 jets to China, marking the country's first major purchase since President Trump's visit during his last term. The two sides were reportedly negotiating details, including jet models, types, and delivery schedules, with the deal potentially forming a central part of a US-China trade agreement. Now, reports indicated that Chinese officials were consulting domestic airlines on their requirements. And Johnson & Johnson announced it would invest $2 billion in North Carolina to expand its U.S. manufacturing presence amid potential U.S. pharmaceutical tariffs. The company had reached a 10-year agreement with Fujifilm Biotechnologies for its Holly Springs facility, creating about 120 new jobs, while additional expansions were planned across the U.S. sites. Major drug makers, including Eli Lilly and AstraZeneca, have also committed billions to grow their U.S. footprint. Adidas executives visited a small indigenous town in southern Mexico to offer an apology over a scandal-inspired shoe design criticized as cultural appropriation. The company had previously issued a written apology and said it would seek future collaboration with the community to respect its cultural heritage. Now, the community leaders and residents of Villa Hidalgo Yalalag welcomed the apology and emphasized the importance of safeguarding local traditions and handmade crafts. And U.S. President Donald Trump will reportedly appoint Airbnb co-founder Joe Gebbia to spearhead the new national design studio that will seek to make digital services at federal agencies more efficient. Donald Trump signed an executive order on Thursday to create the studio, a new body that officials reportedly said appeared to be a stripped-down successor to the controversial Department of Government Efficiency. And Google reportedly struck a 6-year cloud computing agreement with Meta Platforms, worth more than $10 billion, its second major deal after one with OpenAI. Under the deal, Meta was reportedly to use Google Cloud servers, storage, networking, and other services to support its expanding AI and data center infrastructure. The announcement follows Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg's plans to spend hundreds of billions on AI data centers. And Elon Musk and his social media company X Corp reached a tentative agreement to settle a lawsuit by the former Twitter employees over $500 million in severance pay. Attorneys filed a court document on Wednesday requesting a delay in the upcoming 9th U.S. Court of Appeals hearing to finalize the deal, with financial terms not disclosed. The lawsuit stemmed from severance pay claims after Musk fired around 6,000 employees following his 2022 acquisition of Twitter, now rebranded as X. And Apple announced that its streaming service Apple TV Plus would increase monthly prices by $3, raising the cost to about $13 for new subscribers in the US and select international markets. The annual subscription and Apple One bundle prices remained unchanged, and this came as the service continued to struggle to match rivals like Netflix, Disney Plus, and Amazon Prime in subscriber numbers. And ChatGPT parent company OpenAI announced that it would open its first office in India's New Delhi later this year, strengthening its presence in the country, its second largest market by user numbers. The company had established a legal entity in India and had begun hiring a local team, aiming to make advanced AI more accessible across the country. OpenAI faces competition from Google's Gemini and startup Perplexity, while weekly active users in India have quadrupled over the past year, with students reportedly making up the largest segment. And moving on to sports news, India's parliament passed a bill to ban online games played with money. The government said the games pose financial and psychological risks. The sudden ban shocked the $3.6 billion fantasy gaming industry. Executives warned of job losses and shutdowns of app-based businesses. The bill now awaits presidential approval. In cricket, India's sports ministry has cleared the way for India to play Pakistan in multi-nation tournaments. The ministry said no bilateral matches with Pakistan will be allowed. India and Pakistan can still face each other in the Asia Cup in Dubai on the 14th of September. They could also meet in the Women's ODI World Cup in October. It is still unclear whether Indian athletes can compete in events hosted in Pakistan. And in football news, La Liga players have rejected the plan to hold a league match in Miami this December. The proposed match is Barcelona versus Villarreal, scheduled for the 20th of December. The Players' Union, AFE, said that there was no dialogue or respect for players in the decision. And the Spanish Football Federation has asked UEFA and FIFA to approve the game. La Liga has long wanted to stage a competitive match abroad. And violence broke out during the Independent Universidad de Chile match in Buenos Aires. Over 100 fans were arrested and at least 20 were injured. Images showed fans bleeding, collapsing, and even jumping from the stands to escape attacks. FIFA President Gianni Infantino condemned the shocking violence, and the South American football body CONMEBOL said that it is investigating the incident. And in tennis news, the US Open draw has been revealed. Men's world number one, Jannik Sinner, opens his title defense on Sunday. In his first round, the Italian will be facing Czech qualifier Vit Kopriva, and Sinner avoided early clashes with Novak Djokovic or Carlos Alcaraz. It's a favorable draw for Sinner and could boost his chances of retaining the title. And over in the women's draw, Aryna Sabalenka will start her campaign against Spain's Rebecca Mazarova. Sabalenka could also face a trick early test, and in the third round, her opponent could be Canada's Leylah Fernandez. Now, Fernandez upset her at the Flushing Meadows back in 2021. Sabalenka is also on course for fourth-round showdown with Elena Rybakina, her recent conqueror at the Cincinnati Open. And Australia's Nick Kyrgios has withdrawn from the US Open due to injury. It is the third straight year that he has missed the New York Slam. He has now missed 11 of the last 12 Grand Slams. Now, Kyrgios has battled foot, knee and wrist injuries since 2022. He vowed to return but has won just one singles match in 2025. And Ajay Singh has been re-elected as president of the Boxing Federation of India. He defeated challenger Jaslal Pradhan by a margin of 40 to 26 votes. The election results are still subject to a Delhi High Court case. The court is hearing a challenge to changes made in the BFI's constitution. In hockey, Salima Tete has been named captain of India's squad for the Women's Asia Cup in China. The tournament will take place in Hangzhou from the 5th to the 14th of September. The former captain, Savita Punia, has not been included in the squad, and India will face Thailand, Japan and Singapore in the group stage. The winner of the Asia Cup will qualify directly for the 2026 World Cup. And India has bagged a gold at the Asia Shooting Championship. The gold came in the men's 10-meter air rifle team event. India was represented by Rudrankish Patil, Arjun Babuta and Kiran Jadhav. The trio scored 1,892.5 in the men's 10-meter air rifle team event. China grabbed the silver and South Korea took the bronze. And finally, some updates from the world of showbiz. Actor Millie Bobby Brown and musician Jake Bon Jovi have adopted a baby. The pair, who wed in a private ceremony in May of 2024, confirmed the adoption took place earlier this summer. Brown gained worldwide recognition as the 11th in Netflix's Stranger Things, while Bon Jovi is the son of rock legend John Bon Jovi. The family resides in Georgia. Grammy-winning artist Lil Nas X was arrested in Los Angeles after reportedly charging at law enforcement officers, according to police. The incident unfolded in Studio City, where the rapper was spotted walking in his underwear before the altercation. Authorities later confirmed he was hospitalized for a possible overdose. And Nicolas Cage is reportedly close to sealing a deal to star in HBO's True Detective Season 5. The new installment will be set in New York City's Jamaica Bay. The series was renewed in February of 2024, following the success of True Detective Night Country, which drew 12.7 million viewers across platforms. And Top Gun Maverick star Glenn Powell has ruled himself out as a contender for the next James Bond, saying the role should remain with a British actor. "I'm Texan. A Texan should not play James Bond," the 36-year-old told reporters. Powell emphasized the iconic tuxedo belongs to an authentic Brit. And Jacob Elordi has revealed the intense preparation behind his role as the creature in the upcoming adaptation of Frankenstein. The actor described spending entire nights in the makeup chair, starting as early as 10 p.m. to achieve the monstrous look. In between sessions, he practiced the creature's walk and gestures in front of his hotel mirror. The highly anticipated film is set to release later this year. And that's all we have for you in this episode of Fast and Factual. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Firstpost.
The India-Russia bonhomie continues. Donald Trump wants us to disengage from Russia, so guess what New Delhi did? It criticized Trump on Russian soil.